It's a country more than 50 times the size of Denmark, yet it's the Danish crown that appears on its coat of arms. It's called the Greenland, but over 80% of its surface is a frozen desert of brilliant white ice, a sheet so ancient and heavy it has physically depressed the Earth's crust into a basin. This is a place so vast and sparsely populated that it averages about 35,000 square kilometers for every traffic light, all three of which are in the capital city. Most of us know it as a colossal blank space on the world map, a geographical afterthought, a place defined by what it lacks. But this seeming emptiness is a profound illusion. It masks a story of incredible human resilience, a high-stakes geopolitical game of chess, and a ticking environmental clock whose chimes are heard in every coastal city on Earth. So, let's not just visit Greenland. Let's attempt to read its landscape, to trace the converging currents of ice, of ancient memory, and of a global future being written at a terrifying pace. The first paradox strikes you before you even arrive: its name. Greenland. The name was a masterstroke of 10th century marketing, coined over 1,000 years ago by the Norse explorer, Eric the Red. A volatile man banished from Iceland for manslaughter, he sailed west and found a land of deep fjords that, during a brief medieval warm period, were fringed with an impossible green in the summer. He called it Greenland, to entice settlers to follow him into exile. And they did, establishing a European society that would last for 400 years. But the name now holds a bitter irony, as the entire world watches anxiously to see just how green this land of ice might permanently become. To grasp the scale is a challenge to the human imagination. At over 2.1 million square kilometers, it is the world's largest island, a continental slab of rock buried under an ice cap that is, in places, 3 kilometers thick. This is not static ice, it is a living, breathing entity. Ancient air, trapped from millennia past, is compressed within its layers. Its immense weight has pushed the landmass below sea level in its center. Katabatic winds, formed as cold, dense air cools on the high plateau of the ice sheet, scream down its slopes at hurricane force, shaping the very surface of the land. Its entire population, hovering around 57,000 people as of 2025, could comfortably fit inside a single large sports stadium. This results in the lowest population density on Earth. The capital, Nuuk, is home to nearly 20,000 of them. Far from being a dreary outpost, Nuuk is a place of startling contrast where sleek, modern buildings of the Greenlandic Parliament and the Katuak Cultural Center stand against the dramatic backdrop of the Sermitsiaq Mountain. This isn't a single, unified country in the traditional sense. It's an archipelago of human existence. Tiny, colorful settlements cling precariously to the ice-free coastline, separated by impassable glaciers and unforgiving seas. There are no roads connecting these towns. Let that sink in. To visit your cousin in the next town over might require a 2-hour flight. A bag of oranges in a remote village like Idokord Tormiet has undertaken a more epic journey by container ship and helicopter than most people do in a lifetime. This profound, bone-deep isolation is the defining feature of Greenlandic life, shaping everything from its economy and politics to its very soul. The story of who lives here is a saga of survival written across 400-500 years. Long before the first European sails scarred the horizon, the true pioneers of Greenland arrived. They didn't come by sea, but by land, walking from the North American continent across a frozen strait in successive waves of migration. These were waves of Paleo-Inuit peoples. The Sakkep, masters of crafting delicate tools, the Dorset, who carved hauntingly beautiful figurines from walrus ivory, and finally, the Thule people, direct ancestors of the modern Inuit. They were masters of Arctic survival, inventors of the kayak, the dogsled, and the toggling harpoon. They lived in a world of ice we can barely comprehend, their cosmology and culture woven from the rhythms of the sea ice and the animals they hunted. Their story is not a footnote to the European one. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Then, around the year 985, the Norse arrived. For 4 centuries, they built a precarious European society at the edge of the known world. At their peak, they numbered a few thousand, living in settlements with farms, dozens of churches, and even a bishopric in Gardar, receiving tithes and communicating with Rome. They traded walrus ivory, rope, and polar bear pelts for iron, timber, and ecclesiastical luxuries from Europe. So why did they vanish so completely? The simple answer often given is that it got cold, but the truth is a far more compelling cautionary tale. Their disappearance was a perfect storm of climatic and cultural failure. The climate, which had been favorable, began to cool in what is now known as the Little Ice Age, drastically shortening the already brief growing seasons for the hay their cattle depended on. The sea ice, for centuries a navigable challenge, began to choke the shipping lanes, slowly strangling their lifeline to Europe. Economically, the walrus ivory that was their primary export plummeted in value as cheaper elephant ivory began flowing into Europe from Africa. But perhaps most critically, they failed to adapt. Their identity was that of European pastoral farmers. They built their stone longhouses and clung to a diet based on livestock, even as their environment screamed at them to change. Unlike their Thule Inuit neighbors, who were technologically and culturally adapted to hunt the rich marine life of the region, the Norse largely disdained these methods. In the end, the ice, the cold, their economic isolation, and their own cultural inflexibility consumed them, leaving only the haunting ruins of their farms as silent warnings against the folly of trying to bend the Arctic to one's will. The Norse vanished, but European interest did not. In the early 18th century, the Danish, Norwegian missionary Hans Egede sailed to Greenland, ostensibly to find any remaining Norsemen, but instead encountered the Inuit. This marked the beginning of a new era of colonization, trade monopolies, and paternalistic Danish rule that would define the next 2.5 centuries. It was a period of profound and often traumatic change for the Inuit, a history that informs the complex and sometimes tense relationship with Denmark today. That relationship has evolved dramatically. After World War II, a period during which Greenland was effectively severed from occupied Denmark and administered with help from the United States, a process of modernization and political awakening began. This culminated in Home Rule in 1979 and, more significantly, the Act on Self-Government in 2009. This act recognizes the Greenlandic people as a distinct people under international law with the right to self-determination. Today, Greenland is a self-governing, autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. It controls almost all its domestic affairs, from healthcare and education to resource management. Denmark retains control over defense and foreign policy and provides a substantial annual block grant of nearly $1 billion, which accounts for over half of Greenland's public budget. It's a vital lifeline, but for many Greenlanders, it is also a golden chain, creating a deep-seated national debate about the economic viability of full independence. This powerful thirst for autonomy was demonstrated to the world in 1985. Having joined the European Economic Community, the precursor to the EU with Denmark, Greenland voted in a referendum to leave. The reason was singular and existential: fish. The EU's common fisheries policy was seen as an intolerable infringement on their sovereignty over their own marine resources, the lifeblood of their economy. To this day, Greenland remains the only territory to have ever left the EU, a bold and early declaration of resource nationalism. And those resources are now at the center of a global power struggle. The transcript correctly identifies that the US, Russia, and China are intensely interested in Greenland. But the depth of that interest is the real story. For the United States, it is about strategic military presence. Pitifik Space Base, formerly Thurl Air Base, located in the high north, is a critical node in America's ballistic missile early warning and space surveillance network. During the Cold War, the U.S. even ran a top-secret project, Camp Century, attempting to build a nuclear missile launch site under the ice. For Russia, with its massive military buildup in its own Arctic territory, Greenland is a key strategic position for NATO. For China, which has declared itself a near-Arctic state, Greenland is a crucial anchor for its Polar Silk Road initiative, a potential source of the rare earth minerals needed for its tech industries, and a potential site for new ports on future Arctic shipping lanes. This is the context behind the world's collective shock in 2019, when then-President Donald Trump offered to buy Greenland. The offer was swiftly dismissed as absurd by Danish and Greenlandic leaders, who stated clearly, "Greenland is not for sale." But the incident ripped the veil off a geopolitical reality. Greenland is no longer a desolate, icy backwater. It is a strategic centerpiece in the 21st century, holding not just a treasure trove of minerals under its ice, but also the geographical key to the future of the Arctic. While politicians play their games of influence, a far more powerful and inexorable force is reshaping Greenland's destiny, and, by extension, our own. The island is the global epicenter of climate change. Its massive ice sheet, a relic of the last ice age, is melting at an unprecedented and accelerating rate. The data updated through 2025 is terrifying. Greenland is now losing hundreds of billions of tons of ice into the ocean each year. To put that in perspective, the meltwater from Greenland in a single year is often enough to cover the entire state of Texas in several feet of water. This isn't an abstract scientific observation. It is the single largest contributor to global sea level rise. The fate of coastal cities from Miami to Mumbai, from London to Shanghai, is being written in the meltwater flowing from Greenland's glaciers, like the colossal Jakobshavn Glacier, which now moves at a speed visible to the naked eye. For the Greenlanders themselves, this is a terrifying paradox. The melting ice is an existential threat to their traditional culture. The sea ice that Inuit hunters have relied upon for millennia to travel and hunt seals and polar bears is forming later, breaking up earlier, and becoming dangerously unpredictable. This directly threatens their food security and a way of life that is central to their identity. And yet, this same climatic catastrophe is unlocking potential new wealth. The retreating ice is exposing vast deposits of uranium, zinc, iron ore, and the rare earth elements so crucial to our green energy transition. It could create longer grazing seasons for sheep in the south and even allow for the cultivation of new crops. This presents Greenland with an almost impossible choice, a dilemma that has been fiercely debated in their parliament and communities. Do they embrace large-scale mining projects, like the controversial Kvanefjeld rare earth and uranium mine, which promise economic wealth and a path to independence, even if they carry significant environmental risks and contribute to the very industrial system driving climate change? This is not a simple political debate. It's a profound existential crisis, a microcosm of the agonizing dilemma facing all of humanity. So what is it actually like to live in a place defined by such epic forces and extremes? Life here operates on a different set of rules. The concept of private land ownership, a cornerstone of most Western societies, doesn't exist. All land is owned collectively. If you want to build a house, you apply for a right to use permit. This has resulted in the iconic, colorful wooden houses that dot the settlements, painted in bright primary colors, a vibrant defiance of the monochrome landscape. Community is the ultimate survival unit. In such a small, isolated population, kinship and cooperation are essential. This is beautifully embodied in the tradition of Kafamik, an open house celebration for birthdays, weddings, or confirmations where friends, family, and the entire community are welcome to drop in for coffee, cake, and conversation. It's a system of social cohesion made manifest. But this small population also brings unique challenges. The dating pool is incredibly small, and the social pressure to partner up and have children to sustain the population is a real and felt dynamic in smaller communities. This isolation is compounded by a lack of infrastructure and a staggering cost of living, because nearly everything must be imported by ship or plane. The price of everyday goods is exorbitant. A head of lettuce can cost $10. A gallon of milk can be even more. High-speed internet, which we take for granted, remains a luxury. Transportation is a constant battle against the elements. The powerful Greenlandic sled dog is not a tourist novelty, but a vital tool, a living engine for transportation and hunting in the north. In a medical emergency in a remote village, the only option is a helicopter dispatched from a larger town. This life is lived in constant, intimate negotiation with nature. The diet is rich in meat from the land and sea seal, whale, muskox, reindeer, and fish. The hunt is a sacred act, and a successful hunter who provides for his community commands immense respect. The traditional Inuit practice of using every single part of a hunted animal reflects a deep, non-sentimental respect for the natural world. This is why a polar bear head could be considered a prestigious gift. It represents not just wealth, but skill, courage, and the ability to sustain life in the harshest of environments. However, this traditional way of life exists alongside profound social challenges. Greenland grapples with some of the highest suicide rates in the world, a tragic and complex issue linked to the trauma of its colonial past. Rapid and disorienting social change, seasonal depression from the long, dark polar winters, and high rates of alcoholism. It is a stark reminder that even in a land of immense beauty and strong community, deep scars remain. It would be a grave mistake to see Greenland as a society frozen in time, a living museum of Arctic tradition. It is a nation in dynamic, and sometimes turbulent, transition, navigating the treacherous waters between its ancient heritage and a hyper-modern world. Nowhere is this more apparent than in Nuuk. The capital is a place of startling contrasts. You can see a hunter in sealskin boots walking past a chic cafe serving artisanal coffee. There is a national university, a stunning national theater, and a vibrant arts and music scene. Greenlandic bands like Nanook have gained international acclaim, singing powerfully in their native language, Kalaalleq. This language is itself a story of resilience. Suppressed during colonial times, it is now the sole official language of the country, a source of immense national pride, and a cornerstone of modern Greenlandic identity. The arts are another powerful expression of this identity. The intricate tupalak carvings, once fearsome figures from shamanistic traditions, meant to harm one's enemies, are now beautiful works of art that tell stories of myth and the connection to the spirit world. This cultural renaissance is happening alongside the growth of a new, more sustainable industry: tourism. It is not mass tourism, it is high-cost, low-impact expedition tourism. Visitors come to kayak among the colossal, cathedral-sized icebergs of the Ilulissat Isojord, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, to witness the ethereal dance of the Northern Lights, and to experience the Inuit culture firsthand through local guides. This provides a vital source of income, an alternative to the boom and bust cycle of fishing and the uncertain promise of mining. It allows Greenlanders to share their world on their own terms, turning their greatest asset, their unique culture and breathtaking, fragile environment, into their economic future. This is the Greenland of 2025, a land of ancient traditions and satellite dishes, of sled dogs and smartphones, of immense challenges and even greater resilience. Greenland is not a blank space on the map. It is a vibrant, complex portrait of humanity at its most resilient. It is a front row seat to the consequences of our planetary actions and a geopolitical nerve center for a new century being shaped by a warming world. It teaches us that the most remote places are, in fact, deeply connected to us all, and that the greatest perceived emptiness can hold the most profound and urgent stories. It is a land of ice that holds a fierce fire within its people, a fire that is determined to forge its own path forward into an uncertain future. What single fact about Greenland's complex identity surprised you the most? Share your thoughts or any questions you have in the comments below. If this journey has given you a new perspective, consider sharing this video with a fellow traveler who appreciates seeing beyond the surface of a destination. Subscribe for more deep explorations of the world's most fascinating and misunderstood places. Thank you for joining this expedition.